I need to tell you something I've never told anyone before. For 15 years, I worked in a mortuary, and what I experienced there, it followed me home. Some nights, I couldn't sleep. Some nights, I swore I felt them, watching me, even though I was alone. It wasn't just death I dealt with. It was the feeling that death was still here, lingering, patient, waiting. I didn't choose this job because it was glamorous. Far from it. I became a mortuary attendant because it offered stability, routine, and perhaps a morbid curiosity. At first, everything was clinical: cold storage, embalming rooms, paperwork. Handling the deceased is delicate work. You learn respect fast. You wash, you prepare, you preserve. But no one tells you how it gets under your skin, how their presence lingers long after they're gone. Early on, there were small things. A tray that wasn't exactly where I left it. A shadow that flickered at the corner of my eye. The hum of the lights. Sometimes it felt like whispers I couldn't place. You convince yourself it's fatigue, stress, imagination. But over time, the feeling grows. You feel eyes on you, even when no one is there. One night, I was checking the drawers before leaving. One of them, it was slightly ajar. I froze. I hadn't left it open. Then I heard a soft thump from inside. My heart raced. I told myself it was a loose mechanism, nothing more. But I couldn't shake the feeling that something had noticed me, had waited, and wanted me to see. Over the years, the job becomes routine, but the routine is deceiving. Night shifts, endless corridors, the same hum of the refrigeration units. You grow numb. Yet, sometimes a fleeting movement in the corner, a temperature drop, makes your blood run cold. You see faces in the dark, shadows in impossible angles. You tell yourself you're imagining it, but deep down, you know you're not. If you're still with me, pause for a moment. Have you ever felt something unexplainable, just out of reach? Comment below, share your experience. I promise you're not alone. Because after 15 years, the mortuary taught me that the line between the living and the dead is thinner than you think. One night, I was alone, arranging the bodies, when I felt it. Cold, sharp, like a breath on my neck. The lights flickered, shadows twisted. And then I saw it. A body, motionless seconds before, had its head turned. Just watching me. I ran. I never ran like that in 15 years. And even after that night, I could feel presence lingering in the corners of my mind, whispering, patient, waiting. I couldn't sleep for weeks. Every creak, every shadow in my apartment felt like the mortuary had followed me home. I thought about life, death, and how fragile the line between them is. And worse, I realized the burden wasn't just what I saw. It was what I carried inside me. The loneliness, the fear, the understanding that the dead are never truly gone. After 15 years, I've learned something. Death leaves a mark, not just on the living, but on those who touch it daily. Be mindful of the lives around you. Respect the dead, and never dismiss that feeling in the dark. If you found yourself holding your breath through this story, or if it stirred memories you can't explain, subscribe, share, and follow. There are more stories, real stories, waiting to be told, and you might just see the world differently after hearing them.
I worked in a hospital mortuary for 15 years. Most people assume the scariest part of that job is being surrounded by the dead. But the truth is, the dead are the quietest part of the building. What used to keep me awake at night were the moments when the silence inside the mortuary changed. Not loudly. Not violently. Just enough to make you question whether you were truly alone. The mortuary was located beneath the oldest wing of the hospital. Most staff rarely came down there unless they had to. A narrow hallway led past the hospital's maintenance rooms and laundry facility, ending at a heavy steel door marked simply, Mortuary Services. Behind that door, the temperature stayed just above freezing. Cold air circulated constantly through large ventilation ducts in the ceiling, and the room was filled with stainless steel tables, refrigeration units, and cabinets holding instruments used during post-mortem preparation. It smelled like antiseptic, industrial disinfectant, cold metal. I worked mostly overnight shifts. After midnight, the hospital above felt distant, almost like another world. The corridors upstairs quieted. Footsteps disappeared. And down in the mortuary, it was just me. Just the low hum of refrigeration compressors and the occasional click of temperature regulators. After a while you learn every sound in a place like that. Every vibration. Every mechanical rhythm. You learn how the building breathes. Which is why the first strange thing I heard caught my attention immediately. It was around 2:30 in the morning. I was sitting at the documentation desk finishing paperwork when I heard something from the body storage corridor. 3 knocks. Slow. Soft. But deliberate. Knock. 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 At first I didn't react. Mortuaries make noises all the time. Metal contracts in cold temperatures. Air pressure changes when doors open upstairs. But then the sound happened again. 3 knocks. From inside the refrigeration corridor. And that was the moment something inside me realized. Mechanical noises don't knock like someone asking to be let out. Working in a mortuary is about routine. Everything must be done precisely and respectfully. When a body arrived from the hospital wards, it came with identification tags and documentation confirming the time of death. My job began with verification. The wrist tag was checked carefully against the paperwork. Accuracy mattered. Because families depended on it when identifying their loved ones. After verification, the body was transferred onto a stainless steel preparation table under bright examination lights. We cleaned the body gently with disinfectant wipes, removed medical tubing, and positioned the limbs naturally so the person appeared at rest. It was quiet work. Careful work. Once preparation was complete, the body was placed on a rolling tray and moved into one of the refrigeration compartments lining the storage corridor. Each compartment had a thick steel door designed to maintain constant cold temperature. Everything was logged. Everything was documented. Mortuaries depend on control. But that night, something inside the building felt different. The corridor felt colder. And the silence felt heavier. Like the building itself was listening. And somewhere deep inside the storage hallway, I thought I heard metal move. The first real disturbance happened late one night during a quiet shift. Only 4 compartments were occupied. I knew that because I had logged every one of them myself. One of those bodies had been placed in compartment 12. When I walked down the corridor to check the temperature monitors, I noticed something strange. The door to compartment 12 was slightly open. Not wide. Just enough to notice. Maybe 2 centimeters. I walked closer and frowned. Sometimes if you don't close those doors firmly, the latch doesn't fully engage. So I pushed it shut again. Harder this time. The latch clicked into place. Satisfied, I turned and started walking back toward the office. Then I heard it. A slow metallic creak behind me. I stopped. Turned around. And watched as the door to compartment 12 slowly eased open again. After that night, the strange events began happening more often. Some nights I heard soft knocking from inside the storage corridor. Other nights it sounded like metal trays shifting slightly inside the compartments. Always brief. Always subtle. Just enough to make me stop what I was doing. Just enough to make the silence feel wrong. I checked the refrigeration systems. Checked the latches. Checked the ventilation pressure readings. Everything was normal. Which meant there were only 2 possibilities. Either the building was making noises I had somehow never noticed in 15 years. Or something inside the mortuary was moving. And if you're listening to this right now late at night, imagine standing alone in a room full of sealed compartments, hearing sounds that shouldn't be possible. If stories like this keep you up at night, make sure you subscribe and stay with me, because what happened next was the moment I realized something inside that mortuary didn't follow the rules of silence anymore. Sleep became difficult after that. Even on nights when nothing happened. I kept listening. Every vibration. Every creak in the walls. My mind started questioning things I had trusted for years. Had those sounds always been there? Or had something changed inside that building? Mortuary workers learn to keep emotional distance. You don't think about the people in those compartments. But that week, something shifted in my mind. For the first time in 15 years, I was afraid of the silence. Because the mortuary no longer felt empty. It felt like something was waiting. The night that changed everything started like any other shift. Quiet. Cold. Routine. At exactly 2:47 in the morning, I heard a sound that made my blood freeze. A loud metallic bang echoed through the storage corridor. Then something else. The unmistakable sound of a metal tray sliding out of a compartment. Slowly. Metal scraping against metal. I grabbed my flashlight and walked toward the corridor. Every step echoed against the tile floor. When I reached the end of the hallway, one of the compartments was open. The tray extended halfway out. And the worst part. I had personally locked that door earlier that night. I finished that shift. But I never worked another night in that mortuary again. To this day, I still don't know what caused the knocking. Or what pulled that tray from the compartment. Maybe it was mechanical failure. Maybe pressure changes in the refrigeration system. Maybe something explainable that I simply never understood. But there is one detail I have never forgotten. When I checked the tray that had slid out, the body inside hadn't moved. Everything was exactly the way I had left it. Except for one thing. The identification tag tied around the wrist had been turned outward. Facing the corridor. As if someone, or something, wanted to make sure I saw the name. If this story gave you chills tonight, subscribe and stay for the next one, because after 15 years working around the dead, I can promise you one thing. Some places remember more than we think. And sometimes, the silence remembers too.
I worked in a mortuary for 15 years, and there is one night I wish I could erase from my memory. In all that time, I saw hundreds of bodies and worked through more silent nights than I can count. But only once did I ever hear a body breathe. If you are listening to this late at night, especially alone, pay attention to the quiet around you. Silence isn't always empty. Sometimes it hides the smallest sounds, the kinds of sounds you pray you never hear. Before I continue, if stories like this fascinate you, stay with me until the end. What happened that night changed the way I look at death forever. For 15 years I worked as a night mortuary attendant at a regional hospital. The building was old, over 50 years, and the mortuary sat in a quiet concrete wing far behind the main hospital. At night, it was just me. The room smelled faintly of disinfectant and cold metal. Stainless steel storage drawers covered the entire back wall. Each drawer held a body until autopsy or collection by funeral homes. Most nights were quiet. Too quiet. But the night everything happened, the silence felt different. And that was the first time I realized something was wrong. People imagine mortuary work as terrifying, but after a few months it becomes routine. Bodies arrive. Paperwork is verified. Identification tags are checked. The body is logged and stored in refrigeration drawers. Respect and procedure are everything. That night there were 4 bodies. An elderly woman who had died peacefully. A man in his 50s who had collapsed at home. A young motorcyclist from a highway accident. And a construction worker who had suffered a sudden heart attack. Everything looked normal. By midnight the hospital had grown quiet. The distant sounds of machines and footsteps barely reached the mortuary wing. Inside the room, the only sound was the low mechanical hum of the refrigeration units. After years of hearing it, that hum becomes comforting. Until it stops. Around 1:40 in the morning, I heard the first sound. A soft metallic tap. I looked up but didn't move. Equipment in cold environments sometimes makes small noises. A few seconds passed. Then it happened again. Tap. This time it came from the storage wall. I stood up slowly and walked toward the drawers. They were all closed. Everything looked normal. I turned back toward my desk. And then I heard something else. Breathing. Not loud. Not dramatic. Just slow, uneven breathing. Coming from somewhere behind me. I turned slowly. Drawer number 3 had opened slightly. Just enough to reveal a thin black gap. Now remember something important. Those drawers are heavy. They do not slide open by themselves. I approached carefully and grabbed the handle. The metal felt colder than usual. I pulled. The drawer slid open slowly. Inside lay the construction worker, covered with a white sheet. But something was wrong. The sheet had slipped down to his waist. His chest was exposed. And then I saw it. His chest moved. My mind refused to accept what I was seeing. Bodies do not breathe. Not after hours in refrigeration. I leaned closer. And then his eyes opened. Slowly. Weakly. His gaze drifted around the room before landing on me. His lips cracked slightly as he tried to speak. I was awake. My heart slammed against my chest as I rushed to call the emergency ward. Within minutes, doctors burst into the mortuary. The man was alive. Barely. Doctors later discovered what had happened. The hospital had been overwhelmed that evening. Multiple emergencies had arrived at once. In the chaos, the man had been mistakenly declared dead. His pulse had been so faint that it went undetected. He had been tagged, transported, and placed in the mortuary. Alive. Another hour in that freezer would have killed him. He survived. But the story didn't end there. 3 days later, the real body of the construction worker finally arrived. When I checked the identification tag on his wrist, something made my stomach drop. The handwriting wasn't from any hospital staff. It was messy. Shaky. Like someone with frozen hands had written it. And beneath the printed name were 3 words. I was still here. I resigned from the mortuary 2 weeks later. Because after 15 years working around the dead, I learned something terrifying. Sometimes the most frightening thing in a mortuary isn't the dead. It's discovering one of them wasn't supposed to be there yet.